A dark cloud full of acid was seen floating over Venus, and it might be alive. NASA found it hanging high in the sky, moving in strange ways and blocking light like it's trying to hide. It's not made of water, but something more deadly, like battery acid. And inside it, there may be tiny creatures that float and feed on poison. Tune in, because NASA's about to drop a probe straight into that cloud. While the surface is hellish, way up high, about 30 to 40 miles above, it gets weirdly nice. Not beach weather, but not death either, and that's where this mysterious cloud showed up. Scientists are freaking out. It's dark, it moves weird, and it blocks ultraviolet light in a way that has no business happening naturally. But what if it's not a cloud at all? People have been side-eyeing Venus since the 1800s. Back then, some thought the place had swamps and maybe even dinosaurs. That didn't last long. Once probes got there in the 60s, they sent back reports like, "Nope, lava and death everywhere." Now this new cloud shows up, reflecting light in all the wrong ways. It's not a water cloud, it's acidic. Think battery acid, not gentle rain. And inside this acidic mist, some think there could be microbes, extreme ones. The kind that love volcanic pits and toxic sludge. Creatures that thrive where everything else dies. These microbes wouldn't need ground to live on. They could just float, absorb light, feed off sulfur, drift through clouds. That's what's blowing everyone's mind. Floating life, no roots, no trees, just drifting acidic fog packed with microscopic weirdness. NASA isn't sleeping on this. They've got two missions coming, davinci and Veritas. One's going to drop a probe right into those clouds. The other will scan the planet's crust, hunting for old secrets. If they find hints of past oceans or ancient volcanic vents, then the theory that Venus once had life goes from maybe to likely. If Venus had water and life, where did it all go? Some say the planet cooked itself. A planet-wide meltdown that boiled away the oceans and turned the sky into poison. If that happened, whatever was living had two choices: float up or burn. If anything survived, maybe it adapted, became airborne, became the cloud. Earth has bugs that eat radiation and live inside nuclear reactors. We've found slime that survives on pure sulfur in deep-sea vents. Life is flexible. Life is stubborn. If it can happen here, it might happen there, floating in acid clouds, invisible to human eyes. Some scientists whisper that these aren't just clouds. They could be colonies, massive floating colonies of tiny organisms, like giant acid-filled bioballoons, microscopic, organized, alive, existing quietly, high above the chaos below. Now let's crank it up. What if Venus seeded Earth? Wild theories suggest life might have started there, not here. Maybe Venus was paradise once. Something hit it. Life got blasted into space. A rock carried the seeds across space, and those seeds landed here. That idea is called panspermia. It sounds crazy, but it fills some big gaps in our history. Earth's early life appeared fast, too fast, almost like it was planted. What if Venus was the mother and Earth the child? If true, we're not just cousins with whatever's floating in those clouds. We're descendants. There's a darker take too. Venus might be a mirror, not of our past, but of our future. A world that got too hot, a greenhouse nightmare. We've been heating up our planet for decades. Venus is what happens when heat wins. Venus is the final chapter of ignoring climate warnings. Venus might be warning us. A burnt-out Earth, skies turned to fire, life, if it exists, hiding in clouds, not living, just surviving, floating above a dead world, hoping for rescue or rebirth. The new missions to Venus are loaded with hope and dread. davinci will dive into the clouds, sampling gases, testing for life signs. Veritas will scan the surface for old oceans, old rivers, cracks where water once flowed. If Venus ever had plate tectonics or rain, even briefly, that could have been enough. Enough time for microbes, enough time for life. If Venus had surface water for even a few million years, that's more than enough time. Some studies say it might have had oceans for 3 billion years. That's older than some parts of Earth. And if it stayed cool until 700 million years ago, then the window for life wasn't just open, it was wide. The problem is, Venus resurfaced. It melted itself down and buried all the evidence. The rocks that might have held fossils, gone, recycled. But the clouds, they didn't change. They're still up there. And maybe they're carrying the last whispers of what came before. The deeper the scientists look, the weirder things get. There are signs of strange chemicals: carbonyl sulfide, sulfur dioxide, phosphine. Some of these are hard to make without biology, others are volcanic, but the mix looks messy, not random, not natural. There's a substance up there called the unknown UV absorber. It blocks ultraviolet light like sunscreen, but nobody knows what it is. It matches nothing else we've found. Some say it might be a chemical, others say it might be something alive. Microorganisms packed together, forming a floating veil to shield themselves from radiation. In 2019, astronomers found a weird rhythm in the UV absorption. A long-term pattern. It pulsed, changed, almost like the weather, almost like mood swings. That's not normal for just chemicals. That's something reacting, something behaving. In 2021, someone noticed that the color of this mystery absorber matches something called red oil, a mix of organic compounds floating in sulfuric acid. That's not a casual match. That's suspiciously on the nose. Then there's the volcanoes. Venus might still be active. If it is, then fresh nutrients could be spewing into the clouds. Food for whatever might be living up there. Volcanic vents on Earth are where life hides out. Why not Venus? Right when the cloud got weird, Venus showed us something even stranger. Venus used to be thought of as boring, just a hot, angry ball of death. Now it's got secrets. It might have had oceans, might have had rain, might have had rivers. Now it has a mystery cloud, a cloud that might be watching. And while Earth tries to dodge its own doom, Venus floats there, covered in poison and warnings. The more we stare at it, the more it stares back. It's not just about finding aliens. It's about understanding where we came from and where we're going. Venus might be the before and the after. Earth might be in the middle. If life can live in Venus's clouds, it means life is everywhere. Not rare, not fragile, just hidden, waiting, surviving. The cloud isn't proof yet, but it's a question mark in the sky, a sign that life doesn't give up easily. That even in a world filled with acid and fire, something can float, something can adapt. Back in September of 2020, a telescope in Chile called ALMA spotted phosphine floating in Venus's clouds. At first, researchers thought there might be as much as 20 parts per billion up there. That's not a lot, but it's enough to raise eyebrows. Then, more scientists looked into the data and things got messy. Some claimed the numbers were wrong. Others said it wasn't phosphine at all. A few even accused the original researchers of sloppy science. The drama spilled out into the open. A committee from the International Astronomical Union published a harsh statement calling the original work misleading. It got taken down fast, and everyone started pointing fingers. Turns out the statement wasn't even officially approved. That didn't stop the arguments. Teams dug back into the data, pulling it apart pixel by pixel. The issue: calibration errors. Basically, the telescope might have glitched. After cleaning up the mess, the phosphine signal dropped from 20 parts per billion to just 1. That's a huge difference. Still, even 1 part per billion is weird because Venus should have zero. Zero phosphine. None. Not unless something is creating it against all odds. Then came another twist. An old NASA probe from the 1970s called the Pioneer Venus Multiprobe might have also sniffed out phosphine during its mission. Back then, nobody noticed. But in the light of new data, people started going back through the old readings. Turns out there were faint signs of phosphine and other strange chemicals. Ammonia, hydrogen sulfide, ethane, nitrites and hydrogen cyanide. It's a weird mix, like something's cooking up a stew of unknown reactions high above Venus's surface. In 2021, another team looked at the theory that maybe it wasn't phosphine at all. Maybe it was sulfur dioxide, a common gas on Venus, messing with the signal. That seemed likely until they compared data from different years. The contamination from sulfur dioxide didn't match up. In two different data sets from ALMA, the sulfur dioxide signal was too weak to explain the weird blip. In fact, the phosphine signal held strong at around 7 parts per billion, depending on where and when it was measured. To add to the pile, a NASA infrared telescope flying high in Earth's atmosphere, called SOFIA, also took a look. It didn't see phosphine at first, but when the data was processed differently, using non-standard techniques, a faint signal did appear. That reanalysis suggested a concentration of around 1 part per billion. The catch? That study hasn't been peer-reviewed yet, so it's still under the microscope. Meanwhile, another round of measurements confirmed phosphine again in 2024. Not 20 parts per billion, but still something. Enough to keep the debate alive. Now here's where it gets real. No volcanoes on Venus seem active enough to make that gas. The whole idea of phosphine popping up from lava crumbling through chemical reactions doesn't work unless the planet is blowing its top non-stop. But Venus isn't doing that. One idea is that life on Venus might use a type of fat that doesn't dissolve in acid. These would be synthetic versions of fatty acids, where parts of the molecules are swapped out with acid-proof elements. Others think the cells could be made from compounds called red oil, which are made of polycyclic carbon chains that can survive in sulfuric acid. Basically, alien oil bubbles. Even better, some scientists think these microbes might make their own ammonia to neutralize the acid around them. That would create small pockets of a less hostile environment where they could survive. The chemical reaction would also change the levels of sulfur dioxide in the atmosphere, and guess what? That's exactly what telescopes have observed. The sulfur dioxide levels in the upper clouds don't match what should be there. There's a model where the life cycle of these microbes includes floating in droplets, growing, and then sinking down into hotter layers. Once they dry out, they shrink and get carried back up by air currents. It's a full loop. They ride the atmosphere like surfers, living, dying and rising again, but not everyone agrees. Some scientists say the lower haze layers of Venus are too still for particles to float back up. They suggest a different idea, that the microbes have evolved to become super dark in color, soaking up sunlight to stay warm and afloat. Solar heat keeps them suspended, almost like they're flying on invisible thermals. There's even a physical trick called negative photophoresis that could help. Basically, light pressure from the sun could push the particles upward, keeping them in the safe zone where conditions are less deadly. It's weird science, but not impossible. And with every new idea, the mystery deepens. NASA isn't ignoring all this. The space agency has 2 missions lined up for Venus, davinci Plus and Veritas. One will dive into the atmosphere sniffing for chemicals like phosphine, and the other will scan the surface from above using radar. These missions are set to launch sometime between 2028 and 2030. If they stay on schedule, they could give us answers, or more questions. Phosphine was just the start. What came next made no sense at all. While all this is happening, labs on Earth are trying to simulate Venus's brutal environment. They mix chemicals under heat and pressure to see what reactions might mimic what's going on up there. It's tough. Nothing behaves the way it does on Earth. But sometimes strange things happen. Chemical reactions that shouldn't work suddenly do. Those are the moments that push science forward. Meanwhile, telescopes continue to watch Venus, trying to catch changes in its atmosphere. Some scientists believe the phosphine levels might rise and fall with time. Maybe it's seasonal. Maybe it's linked to unknown events on the planet. The data isn't complete, but long-term monitoring could help spot patterns. There's still talk about other explanations, of course. Some researchers think the signal could come from chemistry we just don't understand yet. Maybe Venus has some exotic geological or atmospheric processes that no one has modeled properly. But even then, it would mean discovering new chemistry. That's exciting on its own. The bottom line is this: something is producing phosphine on Venus, and nobody can explain it with what we know. That's why people are whispering about life. Not because we want it to be true, but because nothing else fits. It's the least crazy idea left on the table. This could change everything we thought about where life can exist. If microbes can float in acid, what else is possible? Could similar life exist on gas giants? On exoplanets with nasty weather and thick clouds? If life can adapt to Venus, then the universe might be crawling with weird versions of biology we've never imagined. We're talking about a planet where surface temps melt metal, where probes go to die within minutes, and where the air is mostly poisonous. Yet, up in the sky, about 50 kilometers above all that fiery doom, things get strange. The air is thinner, cooler, around 30 degrees Celsius, and the pressure almost Earth-like. Still deadly, sure, but not instant death deadly. That's where this whole living cloud drama begins. Here comes the twist. On gas giants like Jupiter, phosphine can exist thanks to extreme heat and pressure smashing atoms together. But Venus doesn't have that kind of muscle, which means something else is making it. Before anyone starts screaming aliens, let's stick to facts. No one has found organisms, no pictures of sky-floating blobs, just a molecule that shouldn't be there unless something very unusual is happening. That's what makes this find such a big deal. Phosphine is made of one phosphorus atom and 3 hydrogen atoms. It doesn't just float around, it has to be created, and the ways to create it are extremely limited. Here on Earth, one of the main sources, life forms. Specifically, microbes that live in places most animals would die instantly. Inside swamps, the guts of fish, even inside penguins. That's where phosphine shows up. But on Venus, there are no swamps, no penguins, just thick clouds made of sulfuric acid whipping around the planet at hundreds of kilometers per hour. Yet somehow, that same molecule is up there in large amounts. Scientists double-checked. They used one telescope in Hawaii first. Then they called up another group and used a massive system in Chile. They scanned, reviewed, and confirmed the signal. Phosphine was there, about 30 to 40 kilometers above the surface. But up above, the clouds are a different story. Still dangerous, yes, but survivable with the right tools. The pressure there is similar to Earth's surface, and the temperature is more like a summer day. Acid is the main problem. But life on Earth has already shown it can live in acid. Deep in volcanic vents, in pools that smell like rotten eggs, in freezing ice, boiling lakes. Microbes adapt. They always do. Venus has long been ignored. Mars has been the golden child. Rovers, landers, orbiters, everything gets sent to Mars. But Venus, not so lucky. It had its moment back in the day. The Soviet Union sent landers. One of them survived long enough to send the first photo. Then it died. NASA followed Magellan in the 80s and made the first global map. After that, silence. But the discovery isn't without drama. Some scientists aren't convinced. They say maybe the instruments were off. Maybe the math had errors. Maybe we're misreading the data. They admit it's interesting, but they want more proof. Science doesn't work on guesses. It works on repeatable results. No one knows how they would have gotten there. Maybe they evolved there billions of years ago, when Venus might have had oceans. Maybe they climbed up from the surface as the planet dried and burned. Maybe they came from somewhere else, hitching a ride on space dust. The phosphine finding was published in major science journals, not some backwater site. Real research, peer-reviewed, done by respected names. That's what makes this whole thing harder to dismiss. If it was just a rumor, the story would have died fast. But it hasn't. Now space agencies are racing to figure out next steps. NASA is choosing between different mission proposals.
The two focused on Venus are strong contenders. One will scan the surface for signs of volcanoes and tectonic shifts. The other will go straight through the atmosphere. Imagine a machine dropping through sulfuric clouds, measuring every gas, snapping photos as it sinks. Maybe it catches more phosphine. Maybe it finds something else. Something that shouldn't be there. Space isn't clean. It's messy, hostile, unpredictable. And yet, life seems to find cracks in every rock and puddle. That's the haunting part. If something can live in Venus's clouds, it means life is more stubborn than we ever thought. What if we've been looking for aliens out there, when they've been watching us from Venus all along? Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.